Hello, I'm so excited to be here. My name is Lauren Ricks, and I'm going to be talking to you today about self-care and how it's so important for us as moms, especially with littles, to care for ourselves. And before we get started, I'm going to share a little bit about me. I am a mom of two littles. I have a 6-year-old son who's in first grade, and I have a 3.5-year-old daughter who is home with me currently. And I'm like the full-time house mom manager. It's really what I would say it is, right? I also am running a business from home, helping moms and women live in alignment with their calling God has put on their life. And it's something I'm so passionate about. And I've also been married for almost 10 years. And I have been in the online space for over a decade. And when I got started, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story first before we jump in. When I got started over a decade ago, I started with network marketing, and that really helped me see the importance of self-care and caring for myself. But what happened over that decade, in the 5 years I was in that space, because it was a health and wellness space before I became a mom, was my self-care habits of like working out, eating healthy, getting sunshine became such a part of my business, and I did it for my business versus doing it for myself. And then I became a mom, and when I became a mom of one, it didn't really change. When I became a mom of two, I realized, holy criminies, how I'm caring for myself isn't enough. And I fell into this loop of like, my to-do list was never ending. It felt like no matter what I did, I just had this never ending to-do list. It felt like I was never doing enough. It felt like my business wasn't growing the way I wanted to. And that's when I hired my first mentor, and she really talked to me about this concept of being and doing, right? God created us to be. He didn't create us to constantly do, right? So this was a concept I've never heard before, because I grew up a doer. I grew up an athlete. I grew up, doing more, working harder to get ahead. And that's like the mindset I had that I really had to rework, to understand that it's not just about doing, it's also about being and caring for ourselves. And that's why I truly believe, and why I'm so passionate now about helping moms not just build businesses that are in alignment with their lives, but building lives that are in alignment with their calling, their God-given calling, and their talents and their gifts, and bringing it all together, right? So that we can be intentional, we can be happy, we can love our day-to-day life, right? And not just strive for this like dream future, but really to live our dream future right now in our days by the aligned actions we're creating. Because I truly believe God created us all unique. He created us all to be here in the ideas and the passions and the callings he's put in you, somebody else needs. And I am so passionate about pulling those out of women, Christian women, moms, and helping them build a life that they absolutely love, that's fulfilling, and supporting them while they're intentional and present in their day-to-day life, right? So that's a little bit about me. And we're going to talk about self-care today. And hopefully I tell you some things that you haven't heard yet this month about self-care, and that really help you kind of just shift your perspective around self-care. Because I know for me, when my daughter was little, she was my second. So after I had my second and she was little, she didn't take a bottle. So I was her prime. And I hope you take away something from this chat today that really can help you like shift your perspective and shift the way you look at self-care. Because when my daughter was little, I thought self-care looked like getting a pedicure, getting massages, going on like extreme vacations, shopping sprees. And although those are forms of self-care, they are not the only forms of self-care. And what I really had to do is what I'm going to share with you today on how I set up my self-care habits now, so I'm always meeting my needs. And it's a way that you can do this too. Because if you're a mom and you're at home with your children, or you're a working mom you come home to children, or you're an entrepreneur building a business with children, our self-care, our days, our tasks need to look different. And if you guys want, I have a freebie for an aligned energy, like basically taking your task and aligning it with your cycle that I can share with you guys. I'll post a link with my stuff, but that's an awesome place also to start, is really looking at your cycle and where you are in your cycle. Okay, side note of that. But we're going to talk today about things I shifted when my daughter was little that helped me make sure that I prioritize myself every day versus waiting for somebody to tell me to go have time by myself, right? That's what I was doing. I was waiting for like my husband to say, hey, go take a couple hours and go do something for yourself, or my mom to come and watch the kids. And like, that wasn't feasible because they didn't know what I needed. That's like the first thing, is like, people don't know what you need if you don't know what you need. So it's really looking at what it is that you need for your cup to be filled. And that's what this is. We've heard this all the time. Like, you need to fill your cup because you can't give from an empty cup. And this is so true. Like, I even truly believe that Jesus did this. Jesus filled his cup with prayer. He filled his cup with God every single day to be able to pour to all these people he was ministering to, right? And we are the same. We have to fill our cup with Jesus every day to fill other people's cups. And if we don't, we get depleted. And when we're depleted, we're resentful and we're frustrated and we're overwhelmed and we're not happy with our day-to-day life because we are on empty. Okay. So self-care is also going to look different for all of us at every season of our life and in every phase of our life. And knowing this is so helpful. Like, self-care for you in this season of life maybe is just going to the grocery store by yourself. I know it doesn't seem like self-care, but if you ask your husband or your spouse or your partner, like, hey, I'm going to go to the grocery store by myself, when you normally take the kids to do it, you might have an hour and a half to grocery shop by yourself. And in that time, how can you care for yourself? How can you fill your needs? Maybe you get a nice, yummy coffee that you love. Maybe you listen to music while you go grocery shopping. Maybe you're listening to a podcast. Maybe you call your girlfriend and talk to your girlfriend while you're grocery shopping. Like, what are the things you can do in that span of time that you're by yourself that you can fill your cup to go back to fill other people's cups, right? That's just an example, because I think people don't look at grocery shopping as a self-care. And I know I've heard people say grocery shopping is not a form of self-care, but when you're in a season of life where that's the only you time you get is to go to the grocery store because you have multiple kids, because you like, that's literally the only time you get, let's say, how can you use that time as a form of self-care, right? It's being really intentional with our time and looking at where you have moments in your day that you can fill your cup. I used to do, and I still do this, when I'm making a shake in the morning, or when I'm making a shake at any point of the day, when my kids were little, and I mean, they're still little, but when they were like little, and they were screaming and crying a lot, I would literally, like, when I blended my shake, there was like that minute of bliss where the blending was like loud enough that it stopped their chaos. And I could literally, in that moment, I would just be like, hand on my blender and just like, God, praying for patience. Give me patience. Give me peace today. Fill me with what I need to be intentional with my day. And I would just say a little prayer during that 1 minute time to blend, right? When you go to the bathroom, we're going to talk about this. Okay. This is how I find these pockets of time to like fill my cup with prayer. When you go to the bathroom, leave your phone away and just be in that moment of like 5 minutes, 1 minute, depending on how long you get, what you're doing, to like pray and like, God, give me the patience. Give me what I need today. Fill me up with your spirit so I can fill others up, right? Using that time to be intentional. I know it can be like a misconception that we need hours and hours of time to pray, or you need to get up at like the butt crack of dawn to have 2 hours before your kids wake up to have that time with Jesus. And yes, that would be amazing. But for some of us, the season of life is we're waking up multiple times in the middle of the night, and waking up at 5 to get up before the kids get up at 6 or 7 is not feasible because we're getting up multiple times in the middle of the night. So how can you find those pockets of time during your day to fill your cup, right? So here's my tip. That's like before tips tip. Here's my first tip is don't compare your self-care, your season of life to someone else's season of life. Okay. Their season of life is their season of life. Their life is their life. How they do self-care is how they do self-care. Yours is how you do yours. You cannot compare yours to theirs because they might have different help than you have. They might have their kids in daycare full time. They might have maybe their spouse has more flexibility with their work. Maybe they have family that lives 5 minutes away. Maybe their work is more flexible, right? You cannot compare apple to oranges. You cannot compare your self-care to their self-care. It's really important for us to put our blinders on and not be like, oh, what I'm doing for self-care isn't good enough because so-and-so is doing this for her self-care. It doesn't matter. You do the things that fill your cup, that make you happy, that make you feel refreshed for you. Okay. The next thing is prioritizing yourself first. Now, this can get a bad rap. And before you think, how am I supposed to prioritize myself first? I have children, I have clients, I have a husband, I have a house. When we can prioritize ourselves first, and this doesn't mean not caring about anybody else, this doesn't mean not prioritizing anybody else. This just means caring for your needs as well as caring for everybody else's needs. Okay. It means putting yourself as a priority, right? I talk a lot with my clients about having like 3 to 4 top priorities and making sure one of those is yourself. And then every day making sure you have tasks or actions or to-dos, whatever you want to call them, things on that to-do list for your priority of yourself. And for me, that's my number 3 tip is creating those non-negotiables that fill your needs every single day. And for me, that's the thing that I put under my priority for myself. So my number 1 priority is myself, growing myself, filling my cup, right? And how I do that is by creating non-negotiables that I complete, that I go through, that I do every single day for myself. And they're so simple that no matter what it is I don't accomplish for the day or do accomplish for the day, I really feel fulfilled usually and full usually, depending on what my children are doing, right? Because if I'm being honest, there are some days where I fill my cup and I'm still frustrated because my children have been screaming and crying at each other all day. Like that's life, right? But as long as we can do what we can do to control our nervous system, to control our thoughts, to control our actions, to fill our cup, we can be a lot more intentional and present with that and not so frustrated and overstimulated when we are working on us. Okay. So my non-negotiables, movement, any type of movement every single day, walk, bike ride, workout, whatever it is, movement every single day. Outside time, sunshine. If it's sunny out, I try and get outside multiple times, even if it's 5 minutes, just to feel the sun on my skin. And like that is rejuvenating for me. Okay. Fueling my body with healthy, yummy food that I love. And sometimes even it's not even healthy. Sometimes it's just like, oh my gosh, this cookie or this cupcake or this cake or this whatever would make me so happy right now. And it's something that feels good to eat. And it's something that I can reminisce about eating after I'm done and I'm going to do it. Right. And sometimes it's healthy, sometimes it's not, but it's something that fills me. Okay. Growth in myself. I am a huge learner. I love growing. I thrive when I'm like learning something about myself specifically. So making sure I'm growing myself every single day. Prayer time, having time with Jesus, having time with God every single day. And that might look like waking up before the kids get up. That might look like my pockets of time throughout the day. Also, shutting off my phone and being off my phone, being off of social media when I do not have to be on it. Like having those boundaries around my phone time is something I'm a work in progress in because it can be so addicting. But when I'm not working, leaving it in my office and knowing that like whatever is happening, I can get to eventually. And that helps me be intentional and focused when I'm with my children, right? So those are some little things that I do that fill my needs every single day that are things I can do no matter what. And I would really encourage you to create those for yourself of like, what are your non-negotiable needs that you need every day to be your best you, not to do your best you, to be your best you. What is that thing? Like you have those things within you already. God created you perfect. He created you full of life, full of love, full of compassion, full of wisdom, full of knowledge, full of everything that you need. We forget that growing up, right? We get conditioned growing up to think that we are less than, that we need to do more to be more. And truthfully, you are more, just who you are, but we need to remember that. We need to start creating those things in our day that lead us to that, right? That help us care for ourselves. The other thing is learning to say no to things that are not one of your priorities. Okay. So you have your top 4 priorities. If you are getting asked to do certain things that do not align with your priorities for this season of life, because you might have another season of life, right? You might be in a newborn season of life and a toddler season of life right now. Well, in 3 years, your season of life is going to be different. Or maybe you have a newborn right now and they're waking up 5 times a night. Well, in 6 months, your season of life might be different where they're sleeping through the night, right? So our seasons of life change frequently. So that means your priorities can change as your season of life changes. But know that when you say yes to something, you're ultimately needing to say no to something else. Otherwise, that's where we become overwhelmed with our to-do list, burnt out, right? So making sure that what you say yes to is aligned with your priorities and gives you that like, hell yes, I want to do this. This feels so good to do. This feels so good to have done. And this feels like something that I'm going to look back in the past and like reminisce over, right? Those are things you want to say yes to. Saying no to other things is okay to do. You do not have to say yes to everything, especially if it's not aligned with your season of life. And just know that that's a season right now. When you say yes to something, you say no to something else, right? When you say yes to calls in the evening, you're saying no to bedtime maybe, right? And looking at what is a priority for you right now. So it's so important for us to do that, to look at our priorities and make sure the things we're saying yes to, the things we're filling our plate with are aligned with our priorities, with our energy, with what we want to be about, what we want to be, right? We have the control over that. We have the control over that. So the last thing I want to leave you with is, I have notes here. That's what I'm looking down at. Your journey here on earth is to really create yourself. It is to sit with, look at who God created you to be. And like I said, God created you to be all these amazing things, but we forget that. And for most of us, we have to unbecome all the things the world, society told us we needed to be better. When in reality, we have to unbecome those things to create the being God created us to be, because she's already within us. She's already within us. And to do that, we have to really create ourselves into who we desire to be. And to do that, and who we desire to be and who God created us to be, right? And to do that, we need to care for ourselves. We need to care for ourselves. We cannot depend on anyone else to do that for us. Yes, God can help us, but we also need to take that first step and ask. We also need to take that first step and create that intentional time to be with him. Right? It's just like your marriage. Your marriage isn't going to grow if you're not being intentional with the time with your spouse to grow your marriage, right? Your business is not going to grow if you don't take intentional time to be in your business, growing your business. You're not going to grow. You're not going to work on yourself. You're not going to care for yourself if you do not create intentional time to care for yourself. And that's where it starts, right? So I hope you guys took something away from today's video. If you want to find me, you can find me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is It's Lauren Ricks. I also have a podcast all about becoming aligned as a mom, as an ambitious mom, and it's called Becoming Aligned, the podcast. So you can search for that anywhere you listen to podcasts. And I will leave all my other info down below. You can find me on Facebook as well as at Lauren Ricks. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's call. And come find me, come share, your biggest takeaway with me, come share how you're going to start implementing 1 or 2 of these things. Don't feel like you need to implement all of them, but they kind of stack on each other, but you can also pick and choose. What is the thing that feels good for you to do right now? Where are you struggling right now when it comes to prioritizing yourself, caring for yourself, and start with one thing and do that until that becomes natural for you, second nature for you, and then add another thing, right? Don't feel like you have to overhaul everything. to live in alignment with who God created you to be. But we do need to be aware of it, right? So the actions you're taking every single day, the thoughts you're thinking every single day, are they in alignment with where you want to go, who God created you to be, who do you want to be? And if they aren't, be aware of them and then change them. We have that power. We have that power within us to do that. Okay. If you need any help or support with that, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, I will talk to you guys later.